know there are cheat codes for fantasy football? And if you use these 3 simple tricks at each position, you'll significantly increase your chances of winning. Now let me explain. Let's begin with the running back cheat codes: red zone touches and targets. And the following running backs are values in drafts right now who fit this description. Starting with Ramondre Stevenson, who, look, this guy has the cheat codes. Out of all the running backs in the NFL last year, Ramondre was 3rd in running back targets with 87. And he actually had top 15 red zone usage despite seeing just 60% of the snaps last year, which ranks middle of the pack for running backs. And he only saw 60% of the snaps because he had backfield competition. And that competition came mainly in the form of Damian Harris, who's no longer there. He actually signed with the rival Buffalo Bills on a 1-year deal. And since Harris is gone, Stevenson doesn't really have any competition for touches. These are going to be his major competition pieces as of right now: Pierre Strong and Ty Montgomery. For Pierre Strong, he's a second-year player who was actually really good his last year in college. He had over 1,600 rushing yards and 150 receiving yards. In total, over 1,800 total yards. But he's more of a change of pace back for Stevenson as opposed to a real red zone threat. And then there's Ty Montgomery, who over the last 3 years hasn't even cracked 20 rushing attempts in a season. Remember, he's a converted older wide receiver. So like I said, no competition for Stevenson. So what does this look like? Well, we actually have a bit of a sample here, as Ramondre Stevenson has played 8 games without Damian Harris, where he's been the workhorse back. And in those games, he's averaged 15.1 fantasy points, 4.6 targets, and his total touches, receptions, and rush attempts 16.6. So go grab Stevenson and this next cheat code RB. And that would be, believe it or not, James Conner, who over his final 7 games last year was top 12 in red zone usage and 8th in running back targets. And he still has no competition heading into this year, because these are the Cardinals running backs behind James Conner. You have Keontae Ingram, Corey Clement, and Tyshawn Williams. Let's discuss. Keontae Ingram is a late round running back from last year who, when he actually saw touches, wasn't great. Just 2.2 yards per touch is one of the worst in the NFL. Then there's Corey Clement, who last year saw just 22 total opportunities, and now he's 30 years old, might not even make the team. And Tyshawn Williams, the former Baltimore Raven, didn't see any touches last year, and he has just 35 career rush attempts. Nobody here has anywhere near the experience as James Conner. Now, there is one big issue with Conner. The Cardinals' offense is going to be poor. They're projected to win the least games in the NFL right now per Vegas at 4.5 wins as their over-under, and they're also projected to have the fewest points. So that's not good for any Cardinals player, but it's already built into James Conner's ADP. And now check this out. Last year, the Cardinals only averaged 21 points per game, and they were actually 27th over the final 8 weeks. And despite ranking 27th in actual points scored during that time, James Conner was still a top 5 running back over that stretch, which gives you confidence that he can sustain this production heading into this year without Kyler Murray or a good offense. All right, now we get to another cheat code running back who's going far too late in drafts, and that's Josh Jacobs. You see, last year, Jacobs ranked 7th in red zone touches with 40 amongst every player. And according to Pro Football Focus's data, Josh Jacobs was 11th in running back targets with 61. Now, this was actually the best combined cheat code usage, his targets in red zone touches, that he's seen in his career. And it paid off because it led to Jacobs leading all running backs in fantasy points last year. And he still has the same competition as last year, which wasn't any threat. That competition is Amir Abdullah and Zamir White. Now, Abdullah saw just 36 total opportunities last year and only 4 carries, so no threat here. And Zamir White in his rookie year, despite being somebody that was supposed to be involved from the preseason hype, played 14 games and saw just 17 carries. So quite simply, just take Josh Jacobs in round 3 as the running back 10 off the board. Now, this next running back is pretty interesting, and you might not remember that he has the cheat codes. But it's Leonard Fournette, who is currently a free agent, expected to join a contender this summer, and yes, he still has the cheat code. Because as we can see from Pro Football Focus again right here, Fournette last year was 5th in running back targets with 80. Only Saquon, Ramondre, McCaffrey, and Eckler had more. And Fournette ranked top 15 in red zone usage despite playing just 55% of the snaps. Now, he currently goes as the running back 61 in round 18 of drafts, and he's often goes undrafted. Now, a big misconception that a lot of people will have is that, oh, Leonard Fournette is way too old. But believe it or not, he just turned 28 years old earlier this year, so he actually probably has 1 or 2 more years of good production in him. And if he indeed joins a productive offense that's a playoff contender like he wants to, he'll probably earn 12 to 15 touches a game. So take him before this happens. And then take Cam Akers, who might just be this year's Josh Jacobs. Because Jacobs went in round 5 last year and finished as the #1 overall running back, and this year Cam Akers goes in round 6 and probably has top 10 to top 5 upside. And the reason why he has this upside is because of his cheat codes. Over his final 6 games last year, Akers was top 5 in red zone usage and 4th in fantasy points scored. And it might only get better because check this out. out. Last year, the Los Angeles Rams ranked 29th in plays per game. Just 58.9 plays per game was the least of head coach Sean McVay's career. So expect more plays in 2023, and more plays means more potential fantasy points for Akers. All right, now let's move to the wide receiver cheat codes. The wide receiver cheat codes look at red zone targets and downfield usage. Now, the following wide receivers who are currently values in drafts fit this description. And this one is a complete surprise to me as much as it might be to you, but Courtland Sutton is on this list. Because last year, check this out. Courtland Sutton, his overall target share, the amount of targets he saw in the Broncos offense was 23%, but look at this number right here. His 32% red zone target share, that ranked top 3 in the NFL, which literally means he saw 32% of the Broncos red zone targets. That's like 1 out of every 3, pretty nuts. So he has the red zone usage, but he also has the deep targets. 25 last year was 11th in the NFL, but on a per game basis, he was 9th overall. So overall, this means Sutton ranked 3rd in cheat code targets in 2022. But why did he struggle? Well, quite simply, it was because of the poor quarterback play from Russell Wilson. Sutton ranked 71st in catchable target rate. 28% of his targets weren't even catchable. But there's good news, because in the final 2 games last year without Coach Hackett, Russell Wilson was looking better. And now the Broncos head coach is Sean Payton, who is great at maximizing player potential. And now you can get Sutton at a cheaper price tag. He currently goes as the wide receiver 48 in round 8. Take him right here. All right, now let's talk about the walking cheat code himself. And that man's name would be the Seattle Seahawks wide receiver DK Metcalf. Because last year, Metcalf ranked 3rd in red zone targets with 27, but if you just look at him compared to wide receivers, taking out Travis Kelce, he was 2nd behind just Justin Jefferson by only 1 red zone target. And DK ranked 12th overall according to Pro Football Focus in deep targets. So now here's what you need to know. Since 2019, DK Metcalf ranks 2nd in cheat code targets. Only Devontae Adams has more. Now, despite this, Metcalf goes as the wide receiver 15 in draft, meaning 14 wide receivers on average go ahead of him, but check this out. He'll obviously be playing with Geno Smith again this year, who had a great year last year, and in 22 career games with Geno, DK averages about 15 points per game and 7.8 targets per game, which would rank 7th amongst 2022 wide receivers, and believe it or not, is more points than he averaged with Russell Wilson. So take DK in round 3, and now let's get into the quarterback cheat codes. The QB cheat codes are red zone usage and mobile upside. Now, the following quarterbacks are values in drafts that fit this description. And we can start with the Giants quarterback Daniel Jones, who indeed has the cheat codes. Because last year, Daniel Jones, well, he was 5th overall in rushing yards and 4th in red zone carries. Now, this was Jones' first year with Brian Daboll as his head coach, and Daboll previously was a big influence for Josh Allen's success. And reminder, Josh Allen over the past 3 seasons across those 3 years averages the most fantasy points per game amongst all quarterbacks. And now check this out. Jones was top 10 in quarterback points per game last year, and he saw a career high in efficiency. So very quietly, he's kind of on that same turnaround your career trend as Josh Allen was under Daboll. And he was top 10 in fantasy points per game despite having just 15 touchdown passes, ranking 21st in the NFL. Expect this to naturally increase this year, meaning that Daniel Jones in round 10 of your drafts is a solid quarterback with the cheat codes to be targeting. Now, this next quarterback might have the cheat codes, but we just need to see him play more. And that man's name is Sam Howell, who's expected to start for the Commanders this year. Now, in college, Howell, his final year there, had 828 rushing yards at UNC, which was 69 rushing yards per game. And he only played in 1 game last year, the final game of the year, but he showed his rushing upside. He had 5 carries for 35 yards and scored a touchdown, so about 10 fantasy points on the ground. And there's more good news because Howell is set up for success with new offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy. And if you're not familiar, Bieniemy was the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs the last 5 years and Patrick Mahomes. But that's not the only reason why Howell's set up for success. He has these 3 wide receivers, a good pass catching core. McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Curtis Samuel. All of these guys are great after the catch, meaning easy production for Howell. So take Howell later in your drafts and definitely consider this next quarterback. But before we get there, if you would like to actually win your fantasy league and increase your chances of beating your friends, well, check out the fantasy blueprint I have to offer for you. The blueprint has all the tools and analysis you need. You can see on the screen just a piece of the puzzle, like a 5% of what you get here is my tiers for half point PPR, showing you also the ADP values and disc values. This is updated every single week. And to get the blueprint, you just follow the 2 quick, simple steps with the link in the description below. And now one more important thing to mention, if you don't make your fantasy playoffs, I'll refund your minimum deposit of just $5. So it takes $5 to get the guy, but if you don't make the playoffs, I'll refund that $5. This is risk-free. So get your fantasy blueprint down below, get access and join the thousands of other people who have it, and then get this quarterback. And that man's name is Lamar Jackson, who's being forgotten about. He's been a top 8 quarterback, at least the top 8 quarterback since 2019. And he clearly clearly has the quarterback cheat codes. He was number 2 in rushing yards per game last year and 7th in quarterback red zone usage. Now, here's what you need to know. Lamar currently goes as the quarterback 4 in round 7 of drafts, but he has the best weapons of his career. We could start with the wide receiver room, where it's by far his best 3 wide receiver set he's ever had. You could look at Zay Flowers, the Boston College rookie, Odell, the proven veteran, and Rashad Bateman returning from injury. For the rookie Zay Flowers, first round pick out of Boston College, he accounted for 47% of their production, the college dominator, according to Player Profiler. And then there's Bateman, who ended up averaging 2.59 yards per route run before injury last year, which was top 10 in the NFL. And Odell Beckham Jr., the last time we saw him, he was averaging 13.7 fantasy points per game. He wasn't efficient, he was doing it on touchdowns, but he was still scoring points. And let's not forget, he still has Mark Andrews, who over the last 3 years has the second most tight end usage and targets in the NFL, behind only Travis Kelce. All right, now let's move to the tight end cheat codes. The tight end cheat codes are similar to wide receiver, with red zone usage being important and downfield targets. And these following tight ends fit that description. Starting with David Njoku, who had a career year in 2022 due to his cheat codes. I mean, check this out. Njoku was 2nd in red zone targets and 8th in deep targets last year. But that's not all, because his quarterback for part of the year, Deshaun Watson, struggled last year, but not when he was targeting Njoku, because Watson was top 10 in efficiency targeting David Njoku. And now here's what Njoku did with Watson. In 5 career games with Watson last year, Njoku averaged a little over 9 fantasy points per game and 5.6 targets per game. And this would quietly rank top 8 in tight end usage last year. And if anything improves for Watson, which I expect it to, it's only going to get better for David Njoku. And then the next guy up is the cheat code tight end, not named Travis Kelce, and Mark Andrews, who currently goes in round 3 of drafts. And it's interesting that he goes in round 3 because last year he was top 5 in deep targets, 4th in red zone targets. He was actually on pace to lead all tight ends in overall cheat code targets. But he missed 2 games, and it was really missing 3 games because, as you can see, in week 8 he got hurt and only played 13% of the snaps against Tampa Bay. And now he's entering the prime of his tight end years. I mean, Travis Kelce didn't start popping off till he was like 28. So Mark Andrews has already done it when he's 24, 25, 26, and now 27, the prime of a tight end. You want to take him in round 3. And now for a bit of a sleeper tight end who has the cheat codes, I want to look at the Chargers tight end Gerald Everett, who last year in his first year with the Chargers was top 5 in red zone targets, and he was 11th in fantasy points. And now check this out. Justin Herbert loves his tight ends. In 2020, his first year in the league, he had Hunter Henry, who finished 10th overall. Then 2021, he had Jared Cook, who was 15th overall. And last year, Everett in 2022, 11th overall. And you could expect the Chargers to run even more plays this year. So take Everett as a value as a tight end 18. Give me him over Juwan Johnson, Sam Laporta, and Irv Smith in round 13. So these are the simple cheat codes for each position so that you can win your fantasy league. Now, another cheat code is to watch what the experts are doing in fantasy. And if you want to see the players that they're drafting, well, check out this video right here. And if you're not already, make sure that you hit the subscribe button to stay ahead of all your buddies this fantasy season.